Well, Mr. Secretary, thanks. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I'm sure this isn't always the funnest part of your job.
I know it doesn't look like it, but I enjoyed this discussion because these are debates we have to have. They're about fundamental things, and as I said, we like our plans. We know you like yours. We got to figure out, how to do something together.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Let me tell you, I ran for this seat after spending 35 years in the private sector owning my own company.
What were you thinking is what I was what I wanted to ask you.
It's a legitimate question to ask, but I'll answer that question for you, and then we'll talk. I ran because I'm afraid for my grandchildren, and it is straight and forward and as simple as that. I'm here for them because we have a problem, and if we cannot somehow, administration and the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, finally recognize that we have a major problem and admit it, and be honest with the American people and honest with each other, we cannot solve this problem. And I think we both agree on that.
Completely agree with you.
And so I would ask my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues, I would plead with them on behalf of my grandchildren to stop demonizing every good idea and instead debate it on its merits and come up with a solution. And I'm willing to do that, and I'm willing to work with you to do that. We need solutions. Here's some concerns I have. Last week, Mr. Bernanke said that the best approach would be to put in a long-term strategy. Now, I understand.
Absolutely.
I understand that going beyond 10-year windows is difficult, but I'm concerned on two things.
He meant 10 years, I think, though.
What's that?
I think he meant 10 years. He'd be thrilled with 10 years.
Yeah, well, he probably would be thrilled with 10 years, but we haven't really got a strategy to address some key drivers that I'm concerned about, and one is cost of Medicare. We came up with an idea. It got pretty badly demonized last year, and they're going to use it as television commercials, I'm sure, but it was an idea that warranted debate. And the other one is interest payments. I want to talk to you about interest, because I think interest is really critical. You've got nearly $5 trillion of interest over the next decade. By the end of the decade, interest payments almost triple from 6% of outlays to just a little over 16% of outlays. And could I have figure 3 brought up on the screen here while we're talking? Based on the projection, if we look at the trend lines here, it's going to go to 25 or 30 or 40%, given that the estimates that you use for interest rates stay pretty much the same. I want to know what your feelings are about confidence regarding interest rates if the trend line there continues beyond 2022.
Excellent question. This is a very important point. You're using the nominal deficit number, and what matters for confidence and credibility in interest rates and growth is whether your debt burden as a share of the economy stabilizes at a moderate level. And if you were to do that chart as a percentage of GDP, which one of your colleagues did, I think, earlier today at least, you'll show that deficits come down to the level that stops the debt from growing, and that's the test you need. And if we were able to achieve that, then you could be very confident. You could be very, very confident that we would not face a rise in interest rates in the later years that would damage economic growth.
Okay, so you're pretty comfortable with the interest rate projections that you have in your budget?
Yeah, absolutely I am, and because they assume, but they have to assume, that Congress would enact proposals to bring the deficits down that far.
Right. And in the last 4 years of your budget, we have an increasing, although not a percent of GDP, but an increasing dollar value of debt each year.
True, but that's true. Again, this is very important. We're a $14 trillion economy. We're going to grow in nominal terms by 5% a year. So you have to measure the debt as a share of the economy. It's not helpful to look at it economically or financially.
Bring up chart 5.1 from analytical perspectives then. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. But what it shows you that it stabilizes as a share of the economy in the second half of the decade. Now, as I acknowledged, that's not enough. Because if you just did that and went home, then 20, 30 years out, it would start to grow again, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a major problem, especially when you pile on 16% of outlays on top of Medicare. This becomes just here we go. This becomes practically crisis problem. Yeah. And although I realize you're concerned in the 10-year window, my youngest grandson is 6. No, I'm concerned beyond 2020.
I'm here for the same reason, of course, and I totally agree with you. And I want to make sure you understand. I'm not minimizing the long-term problems. I know them better than almost anybody. All I'm saying to you is that we budget into windows. That's our obligation. And we are proposed a balanced package to meet that simple test, like Simpson-Bowles did in that context.
And I wish the president had accepted Simpson-Bowles, but he didn't. It was his own commission. And we hear often Simpson-Bowles being brought up, but it was his own commission, and he didn't even accept it. I yield back. I'm out of time, Mr. Secretary.
We are Mr. Honda now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. On the Simpson-Bowles, I think that one of the principles they laid out when we talk about the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the principle they laid out for us is to do not address that on the backs of the vulnerable. And I think that's a principle that the President has been looking at and watching it, and that's the point of, I think, disagreement that we have here, it seems to me.
Could I say something on Simpson-Bowles in that context? I think it's good. A few differences on Simpson-Bowles, Congressman. Simpson-Bowles cuts much deeper on defense than we do, and your side would be comfortable with. It has a Social Security package that it was disproportionately weighted to benefit cuts, which gave us some concerns. But if you look beyond those two differences, and those are important differences, we're very close in broad strategy to Simpson-Bowles. On the tax side, we're very close. We go deeper on discretionary spending, on non-defense discretionary than Simpson-Bowles proposed, and we have a pretty substantial set of Medicare savings, Medicaid savings that are pretty substantial relative to what they proposed in their 10-year window. So we're actually very close on broad strategy to Simpson-Bowles with those two exceptions. And in the proposals we made last April and last September, not just they're built on the budget, we show you how close we've come to that basic context. Where you guys are apart from Simpson-Bowles is on two things. One is you have much higher defense levels than they do, much higher, and you have much lower revenues, and that's the difference. But if we could use that as a foundation for negotiating something, which again we tried over the summer several times, then we've been in very good position.
Thank you.
Sorry.